All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, you can make a very compelling case that the American League East was the most competitive baseball division in 2022. Three of the five teams from the AL East all made the postseason last year. Four teams had winning records. And the Baltimore Orioles, a team that finished in fourth place, just missed out on the postseason by 3 games. And for 2023, I do expect the AL East to once again be a very contentious division, but who has what it takes to come out on top in this division? Now, I want to start with the New York Yankees. And in my opinion, the Yankees should be the favorites to win the American League East this year, as they're looking to win the division for the second consecutive year for the first time since 2012. Hard to believe, but that's true. Now, the Yankees, this is a franchise that is always judged by what they're able to do or not do in October. And 2023 is not going to be any different. Now, if you're the Yankees, you might still have a hangover from getting swept in the AL Championship Series last year by the Houston Astros, because the Yankees were going to have their hands full with the Astros in that series regardless. But I don't think anybody really expected them to be swept. But nonetheless, you got to move on from that if you're New York and focus on 2023, as the Yankees are looking to win their first World Series championship since 2009. First things first, Aaron Judge, can he do it again? And we saw Judge have that historic season last year, hitting 62 home runs, batting 311. Of course, he was the American League MVP. I think Judge is still capable of having a big time year. I don't think he's going to have 62 home runs. I'm not even sure if he's going to crack 50, be honest with you, because it's so difficult for guys to have seasons like that back to back. And for me, he's going to get pitched differently. And with in regards to Judge, I think it's also going to be important to see the other people in this Yankee lineup, how they produce. Anthony Rizzo, I think bringing him back was very big for New York, a lefty hitter, a guy who knows how to, make use of that short porch, if you will, down the right field line in the Bronx. And I think he could be a factor in this lineup again. So can Gleyber Torres. But for me, one big question mark for the Yankees heading into the season: can they get anything out of Giancarlo Stanton and Josh Donaldson? Josh Donaldson looks like he's near the end of the line, the former AL MVP. And for Giancarlo Stanton, you're talking about a guy 8, 9 years ago who, was I'm not going to say he was a phenom, but he was a guy that put a lot of fear into a lot of opposing batters. The biggest thing with Stanton throughout his career, he's been unable to stay healthy, and I think it's catching up to him as he is now an older player. So that's going to be the big thing. As a team, the Yankees have to improve because they were eighth in the AL in batting last year with a batting average of just 241. That's not going to get it done again this year. Also, for the Yankees, I look at their pitching staff. The Yankees went out and spent the money on Carlos Rodon. 6 years, 162 million, just to be exact. And the question is going to be: has Rodon turned a corner, or is he just a guy that got it right just in time to cash in as a free agent? You think back to Carlos Rodon's last year with the White Sox, big time year, got traded to the San Francisco Giants, had another solid year last year in Frisco. Obviously, he tested the free agent waters and he was rewarded for it. But the thing is, you played in big markets. You played in Chicago. You've played in San Francisco. I get it. Playing in New York and playing for the Yankees is something that's totally different. So, you know what? You got to be spot on. So let's see how he adjusts to life in New York. And he's going to be important because the Yankees need that depth in their lineup, their pitching rotation, rather, behind Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole is their ace. Say what you want about him at times in the postseason, but nonetheless, he is still their ace. Nestor Cortez, excuse me, had a big time season for the Yankees last year. Can he build off of that? We got to wait and see. Question marks about Luis Severino as well, and then as well as Clay Holmes more than likely being the guy in the ninth inning. Now, I will say this about the Yankees pitching staff. Second in the American League last year in team earned run average at 3.30. I think the pitching is once again going to be key for the Yankees. And it's going to be one of those, can they get enough balance from both their pitching and their hitting throughout the season? You think about Aaron Boone, he's back as a Yankees manager. Brian Cashman is back again as the Yankees general manager. And this team's going to be in postseason contention again. But as always, it comes down to what they can or cannot do in October. And for me, the biggest thing for the Yankees, we've seen it in recent years. They've been up and down for a bulk of the season. They turn it on late in the season in order to make get to the postseason, and things don't work out. Last year, we saw the Yankees come out like gangbusters, and then they limped through a good chunk of the season until the end of the year, and they were able to advance at least through one round of the postseason. It's going to be interesting to see if New York is able to put it together for an entire 162 games. We just got to wait and see. CJ LaChapelle, how are you doing? Obviously, you're not a Yankee fan. I know that. And you're saying, speaking of the AL East, I am really rooting for the Orioles to get to the playoffs. And I'm going to talk about them in just one moment. So just hang tight. For speaking, obviously we're still in the AL East, but the Toronto Blue Jays, they made the playoffs in 2 of the last 3 years, but they've been unable to win a playoff game, more or less advance to the divisional round. And for the Blue Jays, they're one of the youngest teams in Major League Baseball. But will this be the year that their skills shine enough to allow them to make a deeper World Series run? We got to wait and see. Now, this is John Schneider's first full year as manager in Toronto as he took over midseason last year for Charlie Montoyo. Power was not an issue for Toronto last season as their 200 home runs were third in the American League, and they should once again be one of the top slugging teams on the junior circuit. Now, one of the biggest question marks for the Blue Jays heading into this season, it's going to be Vladimir Guerrero Jr. What version of him are we going to be getting in 2023? In 2021, this was a guy who finished second in the AL MVP balloting. You really could have made a compelling case for him to win the award, or he regressed, in my opinion, in 2022, loafed sometimes on the bases as well, and just simply did not look disciplined. So it's going to be interesting to see how things balance out for this youngster here in 2023. You got depth in this lineup. You got Bo Bichette. You got George Springer. Trading Teoscar Hernandez to Seattle is going to leave some of a void in the middle of this Toronto lineup. You're talking about a good power guy who gave them depth. So it's going to be interesting to see how things work out there. And getting to Toronto's pitching, will Alec Manoa be able to build off of his 16-win season last year? That's important. What are they going to get out of Kevin Gaussman in this rotation? And which version of Jose Barrios are the Jays going to get? Barrios last year had an earned run average north of 5. That's not going to cut it again for the starter. You got Jordan Romano in the ninth inning. You have depth in your bullpen with the likes of Adam Simber and Tim Meza. And one move that I think should help the Blue Jays throughout this season, having a guy like Don Mattingly now as your bench coach. Don Mattingly, he's seen so much first and foremost as a player in Major League Baseball. He was one of Joe Torre's assistant coaches for numerous years with the Yankees. He was a manager with the Dodgers. He was a manager most recently with the Miami Marlins. A lot of baseball experience there, and it's going to be interesting to see his impact on this club from the dugout. For me, for the Jays, I just think it's going to be a maturity factor. This team has the tools, but it's just, can they put it all together to be consistent? We got to wait and see. You look at the Tampa Bay Rays, and for the majority of 2022, the Rays flirted with winning the American League East for the third consecutive year until a late season slump resulted in them having to settle for a wild card berth. And that late season swoon carried over to the playoffs for the Rays as they were swept in the wild card round by the Cleveland Guardians. But as this new season is about to begin, do the Rays have enough to make it three AL East titles in the last 4 years? For me, the names on the back of the jerseys continue to change in Tampa, but this is the ninth year for Kevin Cash as their manager. And just like it was previously to Kevin Cash with Joe Madden, it's all about the system and getting the most out of your players in Tampa. Randy Arozarena, of course, he's having a big time impact in the World Baseball Classic right now. Let's see if he carries some of that momentum over to the regular season for Tampa. Yandy Diaz in this lineup, I think, can have an impact. But at the end of the day, Tampa's bread is buttered with their pitching. You look at Shane McClanahan, Tyler Glasnow, Jeffrey Springs, Drew Rasmussen. That's going to be the backbone for this Rays team if they're going to once again be in contention. And just like it has in recent years, I think Tampa Bay will continue to be a tough out. Now, for CJ, here you go. Baltimore Orioles. We saw this team lose 110 games back in 2021. And last year, they became one of the feel good stories in baseball. Baltimore was not expected to keep up once again with the big boys in the AL East. But last year, Baltimore went 83 and 79. Like I started off with, they finished just 3 games short of making the playoffs last year. And for these young Orioles here in 2023, will they be able to build off of last season's turnaround and able to reach in order to reach the postseason, excuse me, here in October? Now, this is year 5 for Brandon Hyde as the manager of the O's. He's been front and center with this rebuild, and now he looks like he's getting ahead of it. Last year, we saw Anthony Santander hit a career high 33 home runs. He's hopefully for Baltimore, he needs to find a way to build off of that. Now, overall, as a team last year, the O's were a middle of the pack club in most categories in the American League, both offensively and defensively. But what helped Baltimore is that they took advantage of the lesser teams that they faced. And that's what you got to do when you're in a division that is so stacked like the American League East. You got to go out there and beat the teams that you're supposed to. And that's what Baltimore did last year. Also, it was easier for Baltimore to adjust to it than their opponents at Camden Yards, but we saw the fences out in the left field area get moved back last year. And this Orioles team took advantage of it. We saw opponents of the Orioles complaining about it, but that's part of the beauty of Major League Baseball. It's truly home field advantage because each ballpark is not created equal. I love that part of it. And that's something that, Baltimore designed or redesigned Camden Yards last year, to kind of fit the strengths of their team. And let's see if they can try to find a way to benefit from it again this season. Now, I will say one thing about Baltimore. They crept up on some people last year. They're not going to be able to do it again. And they have to be this year, in my opinion, is going to be even tougher for them than last year because nothing was expected of them last year. Now you've got teams' attention. Now teams are expecting you to play better. So let's see if the Orioles will be able to live up to that. And finally, in this division, you got the Boston Red Sox. And 2 out of the last 3 years have seen the Red Sox, finish in the basement of the American League East. And that's very unfortunate for their fan base because you think about it from 2004 to 2018, this was a franchise that won 4 World Series championships. And this was a franchise that was a consistent playoff contender. And actually, in 2021, we did see Boston reach the American League Championship Series, but they took a huge step back last year. What type of Red Sox team are we going to get this year? They allowed Xander Bogaerts to walk in free agency. He's now a San Diego Padre. I said last year before the trade deadline that Baltimore, not Baltimore, Boston should have tried to trade JD Martinez. They didn't, and now he left as a free agent. He's a Dodger. So you got to ask, what's going on with Shane Bloom in his front office up there in Boston? Now they tried to save face in signing Rafael Devers to that big extension, but he's only one guy for this lineup. We saw Boston the offseason before go out there and give Trevor Story big money. I was not a fan of it. I wasn't sold on it. I wasn't sold on Trevor Story playing in Colorado. So now you come to Beantown, things are going to be a lot tougher. He didn't have a good year last year. He only hit 238 with 16 home runs and 66 runs batted in 94 games. So first and foremost, he's got to stay healthy. But the thing is, too many question marks for this Red Sox team. You go out there, you make a play for a 38-year-old Justin Turner uh, from the Dodgers. How much more does he have in the tank? We saw him unfortunately get hit in the face earlier in spring training, but I'm not really expecting a lot of him this year. I know to your point, CJ, you talked about Boston bringing in the former Brave Adam Duvall. What type of impact is he going to have? But this pitching for Boston, it was a big question mark for them last year, and I think it's going to be a big struggle again this year. They were 14th in team ERA last year at 4.53 in the American League. You're hopeful that Chris Sale can come back and be Chris Sale, but that's a huge question mark because after helping Boston win that World Series championship in 2018, he's been unable to stay healthy as well. You bring in the ageless Corey Kluber, and the bottom line is Corey Kluber just knows how to pitch. That's one thing I will say. And another thing I will say about Corey Kluber is good or bad, you know, every fifth day when he's given the baseball, he's going to give you his best. And he doesn't have the power in his arm like he did maybe 6 or 7 years ago. But now he's using his smarts, and that his smarts are allowing him to hang around on the MLB scene. Now, for Alex Cora and the Red Sox, they have their hands full, you know, in order to try to be relevant in the American League East and stay out of the cellar. Boston, it's going to be another long shot for them to make the playoffs. I don't even think Boston finishes with a winning record. I really think that this division is still going to be very contentious between the Yankees, the Blue Jays, and the Rays. Baltimore, I think Baltimore is still going to be competitive. I'm not sure if they're going to be playoff competitive. That's going to be the biggest difference for them. For me, I think at the end of the day, this Yankees team, it's their division to lose. It's going to be interesting to see how they come out of the gates. We saw the Yankees come out very strong last year. Like I said, they tapered off, but part of that was because of how Judge carried this team. Who else is going to step up in this lineup to help out Aaron Judge? The Yankees are going to pitch better. I mean, they were second in team ERA last year in the American League. I think their starting pitching has improved, and I think that's going to be a driving force. Tampa is once again going to be a tough out. And will the young Jays grow up? That's going to be the other big question mark. But at the end of the day, I don't see Aaron Judge having a 2022 type season, but I could still, you know, see him hitting about 280, 290, you know, driving in more than 100 runs, hitting 40 home runs, and, you know, once again carrying this Yankee lineup. But like I said, who's going to step up with him? But at the end of the day, I do see the Yankees as the team to beat in the American League East. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. Also, there is the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check that out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. CJ, you beat me to it because I was going to conclude with this. Because, first and foremost, thanks again for checking it out. Thanks again for chiming in as always. And to your question, early next week, I definitely will be talking about the National League East. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that you think the Braves are going to win the division here in 2023. Just a hunch, okay? But nonetheless, That will definitely be out, and I will definitely alert you prior to dropping that as far as when I will talk about the National League East. But folks, with that said, I am William Martin, and I'm signing off. And I'm saying once again, thanks and take care and thank you for listening to the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.